The rain-slicked streets of Chicago gleamed under the streetlights, a mirror to the chaos in Eli's heart. He stood frozen outside the bar, the neon sign buzzing above him like a warning. Tonight, he would tell the world who he really was or lose himself trying. Eli Carter, 26, had spent years hiding. In the small-town church where he grew up, love was a sin if it didn't fit the mold. He married Sarah at 22, thinking it would fix him, make him normal. It didn't. The lie grew heavier each day, until it was a stone in his chest, crushing his breath. Now, standing outside the Rusty Anchor, a queer bar in the heart of the city, he felt the weight of 1,000 unspoken truths. He clutched the crumpled photo in his pocket, a picture of him and Jamie, laughing under a summer sky. Jamie, the man who had cracked open his world. Inside, the bar thrummed with life. Music pulsed, glasses clinked, and voices overlapped in a symphony of freedom. Eli pushed through the door, his heart hammering. Jamie was there, leaning against the counter, his blonde hair catching the light. At 25, Jamie was everything Eli wasn't open, unapologetic, fearless. Their eyes met, and Jamie's smile was a lifeline. "You made it," he said, voice soft but steady. "I couldn't stay away," Eli replied, his voice barely above a whisper. The truth was, he hadn't just come for Jamie. Tonight was open mic night, and Eli had signed up to speak. To come out. To the crowd. To the world. To himself. His hands shook as he signed his name on the list, the pen slipping in his sweaty grip. The stage was small, lit by a single spotlight. When his name was called, Eli felt the room tilt. Jamie squeezed his shoulder. A silent promise, "I'm here." Eli stepped into the light, the crowd a blur of faces. "My name is Eli Carter," he began, his voice cracking. "And I'm gay." The words hung in the air, raw and real. The crowd erupted in cheers, strangers clapping for a courage they didn't fully understand. They called him brave. They didn't know he'd just lit a fuse. By morning, the video of Eli's speech was viral. Posted on X by someone in the crowd, it spread like wildfire. "Local man comes out in heartfelt speech." The captions read, "Friends from his old life saw it. His parents. Sarah." The world he'd left behind came crashing back, and with it, a storm he couldn't outrun. Eli woke to his phone buzzing incessantly. Texts from old friends, some supportive, some cruel. A voicemail from his mother, her voice trembling. "How could you do this to us?" But it was Sarah's message that stopped his heart. "We need to talk. Now." She didn't sound angry. She sounded cold, calculated, like the lawyer she was training to be. They met at a coffee shop on Michigan Avenue, the kind of place where people pretended not to eavesdrop. Sarah sat across from him, her blonde hair pulled back tightly, her eyes sharp. "You humiliated me," she said, stirring her latte with precision. "4 years of marriage, and you were lying the whole time." "I was lying to myself," Eli said, his voice low. "I didn't know how to tell you." "You didn't know how to tell me you were in love with Jamie." Her words were a blade, cutting through the air. Eli froze. How did she know his name? They'd been careful, meeting in secret, keeping their relationship hidden until Eli was ready. But Sarah's smirk told him she knew more than she should. "What do you want, Sarah?" he asked, dread pooling in his stomach. She leaned forward, her voice a whisper. "I know everything, Eli. Your late-night calls, your meetings with him. And I know someone who'll pay for the details." She slid a folder across the table, photos spilling out Eli and Jamie at the park, at a diner, their hands brushing. Someone had been watching them, Who? Eli's voice was hoarse. A reporter, she said. $7,000 for your story. The real one, not the polished version you gave last night. Eli's world spun. His truth, the one he'd fought so hard to claim, was being weaponized. He thought of Jamie, who had grown up in foster care, who had nothing to lose and everything to give. Jamie, who deserved better than this betrayal. Eli's hands clenched into fists. You can't do this. I already have, Sarah said, standing. You wanted to be brave. Eli. This is what bravery costs. As she walked away, Eli felt the weight of her words. The bar, the speech, the cheers, they were a fleeting victory. The real fight was just beginning. He pulled out his phone and texted Jamie, we need to talk. It's bad. The rain started again, streaking the windows, and Eli wondered if he'd ever feel free. Back at his apartment, Eli paced, the walls closing in. Jamie arrived, his hoodie damp from the rain, his eyes searching Eli's face. What's going on? He asked, his voice steady despite the worry in his gaze. Eli told him everything, Sarah. The photos, the reporter. Jamie's jaw tightened, but he didn't flinch. We'll figure this out, he said, pulling Eli into a hug. Together. But Eli wasn't so sure. The city outside roared with life, but inside, he felt like a hunted animal. Someone had betrayed him before Sarah even got involved. Someone close. Someone who knew where he went, who he loved. The question was who and how much damage they could do. Eli sat on the edge of his couch, the city skyline a blur through the window. Jamie was beside him, scrolling through X on his phone, his face grim. The video of Eli's speech had hit 500,000 views, and the comments were a battlefield support clashing with hate. Strangers dissecting his life like it was theirs to judge. They don't know you, Jamie said, tossing the phone aside. But someone does. Someone gave Sarah those photos. Eli nodded, his mind racing. He thought of the bar, the crowd, the faces he couldn't quite place. He'd felt safe there, surrounded by people who understood. But safety was an illusion. I trusted them, he said, his voice breaking. I thought I could finally be myself. Jamie took his hand, his grip firm. You are yourself. This doesn't change that. But his words couldn't erase the fear gnawing at Eli. Sarah's threat was real, and the reporter, a man named Greg Larson, known for tabloid expose, won't hesitate to twist their story into something ugly. They decided to act fast. Eli called his friend Mia, a 28-year-old bartender at the Rusty Anchor who had a knack for reading people. If anyone knew who might have betrayed them, it was her. They met at a diner across town, the kind with sticky tables and coffee that tasted like regret. Mia slid into the booth, her dark curls bouncing, her eyes sharp with concern. You look like hell, she said, pushing a plate of fries toward Eli. Feel like it too, he replied, forcing a smile. He explained everything, Sarah. The photos, the $7,000 deal. Mia's face darkened as she listened. Someone at the bar, she said, leaning back. Had to be. Those photos. They were taken at places only regulars would know about. The park. That diner you and Jamie Love Simeon's been watching you for weeks. Eli's stomach twisted. The Rusty Anchor was his sanctuary, the one place he felt untethered from his past. The thought of a traitor in that space made his skin crawl. Who would do this? He asked. Mia hesitated, then leaned in. There's this guy, Nate. Early 30s. Always at the bar. Always watching. He was there the night you spoke. I saw him taking pictures. Thought it was just for socials. But now, she trailed off, her eyes narrowing. Nate. Eli vaguely remembered him quiet, always in a corner, nursing a beer. He'd seemed harmless, just another face in the crowd. Why would he care about me? Eli asked. Money, Mia said bluntly. Or maybe he's got a grudge. Some people hate seeing others live their truth. She promised to dig deeper, ask around without raising suspicion. As they left the diner, Eli felt a flicker of hope. Maybe they could find Nate, stop him before the story broke. But hope was fragile. That night, Eli and Jamie stayed up, combing through X for clues. They found Nate's profile, a sparse page with cryptic posts about truth and consequences. One post, from the night of Eli's speech, read, "Some secrets are worth more than loyalty." It was vague, but it felt like a taunt. Jamie's hand tightened on Eli's. "We're not letting him win," he said. The next day, Eli went to work at the bookstore where he shelved novels and dreamed of a quieter life. His boss, Clara, a kind woman in her 50s, noticed his distraction. "You okay, kid?" she asked, her voice gentle. Eli wanted to tell her everything, but the word stuck. Instead, he nodded, shelving a copy of Giovanni's Room. The irony wasn't lost on Hima's story about love and shame, mirroring his own. By noon, his phone buzzed with a new message from an unknown number. "Check the news tomorrow. You're famous." Attached was a grainy photo of him and Jamie kissing outside the bar. Panic surged through him. He called Jamie, who was at his part-time job at a community center. "We need to find Nate," Eli said, his voice shaking. "Now." They met Mia at the Rusty Anchor that evening. The bar was quieter. The usual crowd thinned out. Mia pointed to a corner where Nate usually sat, but he wasn't there. "He's been AWOL since last night," she said. "But I heard he hangs out at a dive bar on Halstead. Shady place. Perfect for shady deals." Eli and Jamie exchanged a glance. They had no plan, no leverage, just desperation. But they couldn't sit still while their lives were sold for $7,000. They left the bar, the Chicago wind biting at their faces, and headed for Halstead. The city felt alive with secrets, and Eli wondered how many more would unravel before this was over. The dive bar on Halstead was a hole in the wall, its neon sign flickering like a dying star. Inside, the air was thick with cigarette smoke and regret. Eli and Jamie scanned the room, their nerves taut. Nate was there, slumped in a booth, his dark eyes glinting as he sipped a beer. He looked older than Eli remembered, his face etched with a cynicism that made Eli's skin crawl. "Stay calm," Jamie whispered, his hand brushing Eli's arm. They approached, trying to look casual, but Nate's smirk told them he knew why they were there. Well, he said, leaning back. "The heroes of the hour. Sit down, boys." Eli's fists clenched, but he sat, Jamie beside him. "Why are you doing this?" Eli asked, his voice low. "What did I ever do to you?" Nate chuckled, a sound like gravel. "It's not personal, Eli. It's business. Your story's hot right now, brave gay guy. Tragic marriage. Secret lover. People eat that up. And Sarah, she's got the cash to make it worth my while." "You sold us out," Jamie said, his voice sharp. "For what?" $7,000. Nate shrugged. $7,000's a lot when you're drowning in debt. You wouldn't understand. Golden boy. His eyes flicked to Jamie, a hint of resentment there. Eli realized Nate wasn't just an opportunist, was jealous, bitter, maybe even hurt. But that didn't make him less dangerous. We can pay you, Eli blurted, though he had no idea how. His savings were meager, his job barely covering rent. Jamie shot him a look, but Eli pressed on. Name your price. Nate leaned forward, his breath sour. You think you can outbid Sarah? She's got connections, kid. And she's pissed. You broke her heart, and now she's breaking you. Eli's stomach churned. He thought of Sarah, the woman he'd once loved in his own broken way. He'd hurt her, yes, but this was revenge on a scale he hadn't imagined. What does she want? He asked. Your shame, Nate said simply. She wants the world to see you as the liar she thinks you are. He slid a flash drive across the table. This has everything: texts, photos, even recordings. Give me 10 grand by tomorrow, or it goes to Larson. Eli stared at the flash drive, his heart pounding. $10,000 was impossible. He felt Jamie's hand on his knee, grounding him. We'll get it, Jamie said, his voice steady, though Eli knew he was bluffing. Nate smirked and stood, leaving them with the weight of his ultimatum. Outside, the city was a blur of lights and noise. Eli felt like he was drowning. We can't pay him, he said, his voice breaking. And even if we could, what's to stop him from selling it anyway? Jamie pulled him into an alley, away from the street's chaos. We don't pay him, he said, his eyes fierce. We expose him. If he's selling secrets, he's got his own to hide. They went back to Mia, who was waiting at the rusty anchor. She listened, her face grim, and nodded. Nate's not as slick as he thinks, she said. He's been bragging about his big score to anyone who'll listen. I bet he's got enemies. Let me make some calls. By midnight, Mia had a lead. Nate had crossed a local photographer, Lena, who specialized in queer nightlife shots. She'd caught him stealing her work once, and she wasn't the forgiving type. Lena was in her 40s, tough as nails, and owed Mia a favor. They met her at a loft downtown, her walls lined with vibrant photos of drag queens and pride parades. Nate's a leech, Lena said, lighting a cigarette. He's been sniffing around the community for years, acting like he belongs, but he's just looking for dirt. I can get you his laptop where he keeps his files, but it'll cost you. How much? Jamie asked. Not money, Lena said, her eyes narrowing. A story. You tell me yours, the real one, and I'll help you bury him. Eli hesitated. His story was already out there, twisted and sold. But Lena's gaze was steady, not predatory. She wanted truth, not gossip. He took a deep breath and started talking about growing up afraid, about loving Jamie, about the night he finally spoke his truth. Jamie added his own pieces, his voice soft but strong. By the end, Lena was nodding, a faint smile on her lips. Deal, she said. Give me till tomorrow night. I'll get you what you need. As they left, Eli felt a spark of hope, but it was fragile. The clock was ticking, and Nate's flash drive loomed like a guillotine. The city pulsed around them, alive with secrets, and Eli wondered if truth was worth the price. The next day was a blur of tension. Eli barely slept, his dreams haunted by Sarah's cold smile and Nate's smirk. He and Jamie spent the morning at the bookstore, pretending to work while checking X for updates. The internet was buzzing with speculation about Eli's story, some calling him a hero, others a fraud. Each comment felt like a needle in his skin. Lena called it noon. Meet me at my loft. 8 p.m., she said, her voice clipped. I've got something. She hung up before Eli could ask questions. He looked at Jamie, who was stacking flyers at the community center, his jaw tight with worry. "You trust her?" Jamie asked. "I have to," Eli said. He felt like he was balancing on a knife's edge. One wrong move, and everything would collapse. They spent the afternoon planning, trying to anticipate Nate's next move. Mia texted updates. Nate was back at the Rusty Anchor, acting like nothing was wrong. It made Eli's blood boil. How could someone betray a community for cash? At 8 p.m., they arrived at Lena's loft. She was waiting, a laptop open on her table, its screen glowing with files. "Nate's not as smart as he thinks," she said, blowing smoke toward the ceiling. "Left his laptop at a friend's place. I borrowed it." She grinned, but there was steel in her eyes. The laptop held a Goldman emails between Nate and Greg Larson, the reporter. Nate had been feeding him stories for months, not just about Eli, but others in the community. There were photos, audio clips, even private messages stolen from group chats. Eli felt sick. This wasn't just about him anymore. Nate was a predator, preying on trust. "There's more," Lena said, clicking a folder labeled Sarah. Inside were texts between Nate and Sarah, detailing their deal. Sarah had offered $7,000 up front, with a promise of more if the story went viral. But there was a twist. Sarah wasn't just after revenge. She was working with a conservative group that wanted to use Eli's story to push an anti-LGBT agenda. "They want to paint you as a liar who ruined a good Christian marriage," Lena said. Eli's knees buckled. He sank into a chair, his head in his hands. Jamie knelt beside him, his hand on Eli's back. "They can't do this," Jamie said, his voice fierce. "We won't let them." Lena leaned forward. "You want to fight? Use this." She gestured to the laptop. "Expose Nate. Expose Sarah. But you need to move fast. Larson's story drops tomorrow." Eli looked at the files, his heart racing. This was their chance, but it came with a cost. Going public meant dragging their lives into the spotlight again, bearing their pain for the world to judge. He thought of his parents, who hadn't spoken to him since the video. Of Sarah, who he'd once loved. Of Jamie, who deserved a life free from this mess. "What do we do?" Eli asked, his voice barely a whisper. Jamie took his hand. "We tell the truth. Our truth. Not their twisted version." Lena nodded. "I've got a friend at a local paper, the Chicago Free Press. They're small, but they're fair. They'll run your story if you give it to them tonight." Eli hesitated. The thought of more exposure terrified him, but silence was worse. He nodded, and Lena made the call. By 10 p.m., they were at the Free Press office, a cramped space filled with coffee cups and deadlines. The editor, a woman named Rachel in her 30s, listened as Eli and Jamie poured out their story. Lena handed over the laptop, the evidence of Nate's betrayal laid bare. Rachel's eyes were kind but sharp. "This is big," she said. "But it's risky. You sure you're ready for this?" Eli looked at Jamie, whose steady gaze gave him strength. "I'm ready," he said, and for the first time, he believed it. They worked through the night, crafting a piece that told their story: Eli's coming out, Sarah's revenge, Nate's betrayal. They included the emails, the texts, the proof that this wasn't just about them, but about a community targeted for profit. By dawn, the story was filed, set to publish online before Larson's expose could hit. As they left the office, the first light of morning broke over Chicago. Eli felt raw, exposed, but also free. He squeezed Jamie's hand, grateful for his unwavering presence. The fight wasn't over. But for the first time, Eli felt like he was fighting for himself. The Chicago Free Press story hit the internet at 7 a.m. And by 8, it was trending on X. Local man exposes betrayal in LGBT community. The headline read, with Eli and Jamie's names front and center. The article was raw, honest, and unapologetic, detailing Nate's scheme and Sarah's role with cold, hard evidence. Comments poured in, some cruel, but most supportive, calling for accountability. Eli's phone buzzed with notifications, but he ignored them, his focus on Jamie as they sat in a quiet cafe, waiting for the fallout. Jamie scrolled through X, his face tense. Nate's gone silent, he said. No posts, no replies. He's probably panicking. Eli nodded, but his mind was on Sarah. She'd see the story soon, if she hadn't already. He wondered what she'd feel: anger, shame, or something deeper. At noon, Mia called. Nate's at the bar, she said. He's drunk and talking loud. Says he's leaving town tonight. Eli's heart raced. If Nate disappeared, he could sell the story elsewhere, keep the cycle going. They needed to confront him, get the flash drive, end this. They found Nate at the Rusty Anchor, slumped in his usual corner, his eyes bloodshot. The bar was nearly empty, the afternoon light casting long shadows. Eli approached, Jamie at his side, their steps deliberate. Nate, Eli said, his voice steady despite the fear in his chest. Give us the flash drive. Nate laughed, a hollow sound. You think you're heroes now? That article won't stop anything. People love a scandal. He pulled the flash drive from his pocket, dangling it like bait. This is my ticket out. Jamie stepped forward, his voice low. You're done, Nate. The whole city knows what you did. Hand it over, or we call the cops. It was a bluff. They had no grounds to involve the police, but Nate's eyes flickered with doubt. You don't get it, Nate said, his voice slurring. This isn't just about you. It's bigger. Sarah's people, they want to tear down places like this. He gestured to the bar, his hand shaking. They paid me to start with you, but you're just the beginning. Eli's blood ran cold. Sarah's involvement with the conservative group was worse than he'd thought. This wasn't just personal, it was political. A calculated attack on the community he'd come to call home. He snatched the flash drive from Nate's hand, surprising him. Nate lunged, but Jamie blocked him, his strength a quiet force. Leave, Jamie said, his voice like steel. And don't come back. Nate stumbled out, muttering curses, leaving the flash drive in Eli's trembling hands. They checked it at Lena's loft, confirming it held the same files as the laptop. They destroyed it, snapping the plastic in two, a small act of defiance. But the victory felt hollow. Sarah was still out there, and her allies had deeper pockets than Nate's. That evening, Eli got a call from Rachel at the Free Press. Sarah's group is pushing back, she said. They're claiming you're lying, that the emails are fake. They're threatening to sue. Eli's heart sank. He knew Sarah was a skilled lawyer. She could twist the truth into knots. We need to talk to her, Jamie said, his voice firm. Face to face. No more games. Eli hesitated. Seeing Sarah again felt like walking into a lion's den. But Jamie was right. They couldn't let her control the narrative. They tracked her down to her office, a sleek building downtown where she was interning at a law firm. The receptionist eyed them warily, but Sarah agreed to see them, her face a mask of composure. You've made a mess, Eli, she said, sitting behind her desk, her voice icy. That article. It's slander. I'll bury you in court. You sold my life for $7. 000. Eli shot back, his anger rising. You and your group want to use me to hurt people. Why? Sarah's mask slipped, just for a moment, revealing pain beneath her anger. You broke me, Eli, she said. For years. And I was never enough. I wanted you to feel that. Eli softened, guilt mixing with his resolve. I'm sorry I hurt you, he said. But this isn't justice. It's revenge. And it's not just me you're hurting, it's everyone like me. Sarah looked away, her hands trembling slightly. For the first time, Eli saw doubt in her eyes. Jamie stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. Drop this, Sarah. Walk away. You don't have to be part of their hate. She didn't respond, but the silence was heavy. As they left, Eli felt a shift, like the ground beneath him was steadying. Sarah wasn't the villain he'd feared. She was human, flawed, and hurting. But her choices were hers, and he couldn't carry them anymore. The next morning, Eli woke to a new reality. The Free Press story had sparked a movement on X, with hashtags like Truth Over Secrets trending. People shared their own stories of coming out, of betrayal, of fighting for their place in the world. Eli read them, tears in his eyes, feeling less alone. But the fight wasn't over. Sarah's group had released a statement, denying the emails and calling Eli's story a fabrication. They were doubling down, and Eli knew they wouldn't stop. He and Jamie met with Lena and Mia at the diner, their faces grim but determined. Lena had more news. She'd found a witness, a former intern at Sarah's firm who had overheard her discussing the deal with Nate. The intern, a shy 22-year-old named Alex, was willing to talk but scared of retaliation. He's got proof, Lena said. Recordings of Sarah on the phone with Larson. But he needs protection. Eli felt a surge of hope, but also fear. Alex was young, vulnerable, and risking everything. We can't let him get hurt, Eli said. Jamie nodded, his hand finding Eli's under the table. They met Alex at a park, away from prying eyes. He was nervous, his hands fidgeting with a recorder. I didn't know what they were doing at first, he said, his voice low. But I heard Sarah talking about you, about how they could use your story to push their agenda. I recorded it because it felt wrong. Eli listened to the recording, his heart pounding. Sarah's voice was clear, discussing the $7,000 deal, her tone cold and calculated. It was damning, but using it meant exposing Alex. Are you sure? Eli asked him. This could cost you your job, maybe more. Alex nodded, his eyes steady. I know what it's like to hide who you are. I want to help. They took the recording to Rachel, who promised to handle it carefully. The Free Press published a follow-up, including Alex's evidence but protecting his identity. The story exploded, with major outlets picking it up. Sarah's group was on the defensive, their credibility crumbling. Eli felt a flicker of triumph, but it was tempered by exhaustion. Every step forward came with a cost. That night, Eli and Jamie went to the Rusty Anchor, needing the comfort of their community. The bar was packed, the air electric with solidarity. People approached Eli, offering hugs, words of support. Mia was behind the bar, her smile fierce. You did good, kid, she said, sliding him a drink. But the moment was interrupted by a text from Sarah. Meet me. Alone. Grant Park. Midnight. Eli showed it to Jamie, who frowned. It's a trap, he said. Maybe, Eli said. But I need to know what she wants. Against Jamie's protests, Eli went, the park dark and quiet under the stars. Sarah was there, sitting on a bench, her face pale. She looked smaller, less like the woman who'd threatened him and more like the one he'd once known. "I didn't expect it to go this far," she said, her voice barely audible. "I was angry, Eli. I wanted you to hurt like I did. But this," she gestured vaguely, as if the world itself was her mistake. "They're dropping me. The group. The firm. They say I'm a liability now." Eli felt a pang of pity, but also resolve. "You made choices, Sarah. You could have stopped this." She nodded, tears in her eyes. "I'm sorry," she whispered. It wasn't enough, but it was something. She stood, leaving an envelope on the bench. "It's the rest of the photos. I told Larson to kill the story. It's over." Eli took the envelope, his hands shaking. He wanted to believe her, but trust was a fragile thing. As she walked away, he felt a weight lift, but the scars remained. He returned to Jamie, who was waiting at the bar, his eyes searching Eli's face. "You okay?" Jamie asked. "Not yet," Eli said, but he leaned into Jamie's embrace, finding strength there. The city hummed around them, alive with possibility, and for the first time, Eli felt like he could breathe. The days that followed were a whirlwind. The Free Press story, backed by Alex's recording, had shifted the narrative. Sarah's group issued a public apology, distancing themselves from her actions, though Eli knew it was damage control. Larson, the reporter, had vanished from X, his exposé dead in the water. The community rallied, with the Rusty Anchor hosting a fundraiser for queer youth, the bar packed with supporters. Eli and Jamie stood in the crowd, their hands linked, feeling the warmth of belonging. But healing wasn't linear. Eli's parents called, their voices strained but softer than before. "We saw the news," his mother said. "We're trying to understand." It wasn't acceptance, but it was a start. Eli hung up, tears in his eyes, and Jamie held him, no words needed. Mia and Lena became their anchors. Mia kept the bar a safe space, banning anyone who stirred trouble. Lena used her platform to amplify queer voices, her photos telling stories of resilience. Alex, now out as non-binary, found a new job at a community center, their courage inspiring Eli to keep going. One evening, Eli and Jamie sat on their apartment's fire escape, the city sprawling below. The skyline glittered, a reminder of how far they'd come. "I thought coming out was the hard part," Eli said, his voice quiet. "But this fighting for it, every day it's exhausting." Jamie nodded, his arm around Eli's shoulders. "It's worth it, though. You're worth it." His words were a balm, soothing the raw edges of Eli's heart. They decided to write their own story, not for the press, but for themselves. They started a blog, sharing their journey, the pain, the love, the fight for truth. It was small, but it was theirs, a space where they could be honest without fear. Comments poured in, from kids in small towns to elders who'd lived through their own battles. Each one reminded Eli why he'd spoken up that night at the bar. But the past wasn't done with them. A week later, Eli got an email from Sarah. It was brief, no apologies, just a link to a legal document. She'd filed for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences. No mention of the $7,000. No threats. It was closure, cold but final. Eli signed the papers, his hand steady, and mailed them back. He felt lighter, like a chapter had closed. That night, the Rusty Anchor held a celebration for the fundraiser's success. Eli took the stage again, not to come out, but to thank the community. His voice was stronger now, less shaky. "You saved me," he said, looking at Jamie, Mia, Lena, and the crowd. And I'm not done fighting for us. The cheers were louder than before, a roar of defiance and love. Jamie joined him on stage, their hands clasped, and for a moment, the world felt right. Eli knew there would be more battles. Hate didn't vanish overnight, but he also knew he wasn't alone. As they left the bar, the Chicago night wrapped around them, cool and alive. Eli looked at Jamie, his heart full. "I love you," he said, the words simple but heavy with truth. "I love you too," Jamie replied, and they walked into the city, their future unwritten but theirs to shape. Months passed, and the scars of that summer began to fade, though they never fully disappeared. Eli and Jamie moved into a small apartment together, a space filled with secondhand furniture and new memories. The city, once a battleground, became a home. They walked its streets hand in hand, unafraid, their love a quiet rebellion against the world that had tried to break them. The blog grew, a beacon for others navigating their truths. Eli wrote about the night he came out, the betrayal, the fight, but also the joy, the way Jamie's laugh lit up a room, the way Mia's fierce loyalty held them together, the way Lena's photos captured their resilience. Strangers reached out, sharing their own stories, and Eli realized his voice had become part of something bigger. Sarah faded from their lives. Eli heard she'd moved to Boston, starting over at a new firm. He hoped she found peace, but he didn't dwell on it. His focus was forward, on the life he was building with Jamie. They volunteered at the community center, mentoring queer youth, helping kids like Alex find their footing. Each smile, each small victory, felt like a triumph over the past. One spring evening, the Rusty Anchor hosted a pride event, the bar decked out in rainbows. Eli and Jamie stood at the bar, watching the crowd dance and laugh. Mia poured drinks, her grin infectious. Lena snapped photos, her lens catching moments of joy. Alex was there, their confidence growing, a new light in their eyes. Eli took Jamie's hand, pulling him onto the dance floor. The music was loud, the lights bright, but all Eli saw was Jamie, the man who'd stood by him through the storm. They danced, their bodies close, their laughter mingling with the beat. For the first time, Eli felt truly free, not just from his past, but from the fear that had defined it. Later, they stepped outside, the night air cool against their skin. The city hummed, alive with possibility. Eli looked at the stars, a rare sight in Chicago's glow, and thought of the boy he'd been afraid, hiding, ashamed. That boy was gone, replaced by a man who knew his worth. "Thank you," Eli said, turning to Jamie. "For everything." Jamie smiled, his eyes soft. "We're just getting started." They walked back to their apartment, the future stretching before them. It wasn't perfect. Hate still lingered, and battles loomed, but it was theirs. Eli had come out, fought for his truth, and won something greater than freedom, love, community, and the courage to keep going. The world had called him brave, but he knew the real bravery was in the quiet moments, the choice to live authentically, every single day. And as they stepped into their home, hand in hand, Eli knew he'd never stop choosing it.